Today, we are going to be looking at literature review. We are going to be looking at the essential parts of a literature review, how to review literature step by step. We are also going to be looking at important websites, some online resources, or artificial intelligence that could help your literature review go smoothly and easier than you could ever imagine. You are welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is May, and I wrote my own dissertation in 2019, and I am currently working on my PhD, my doctoral thesis, so I know a thing or two about literature and literature review. You are welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are just joining me for the first time, kindly hit the subscribe button. If you are already subscribed, thank you very much for subscribing. So without further ado, let's move to what a literature review is. So a literature review is a core part of any research project. It includes dissertations. So for the purpose of this conversation this morning, we're just talking about dissertations. So guys, the conversation is bordered around dissertations. We're not talking about theses or coursework. We're talking about dissertations. So how to review literature, what we'll be looking out for ordinarily. We're also going to be looking a step-by-step guide for conducting your literature review. So guys, this guide is going to walk you through the process of conducting a literature review. This guide is going to offer tips to you to avoid plagiarism and also introduce useful apps and AI tools to stream. So guys, let's move on straight to how to review your literature, how to conduct a literature, a step-by-step guide. So the number one thing you want to do, or the first step you want to take, is you begin by identifying or you determine the scope of your literature review. So you can't just go about reviewing literature blindly. So you need to identify a scope for your literature review. Now you need to ask yourself, what are specific aspects of your topic that you are focusing on? You also need to ask yourself, what time frame or geographic location does your literature review cover? For example, if your dissertation is on the effects of social media and mental health, you might want to focus on literature published in the last 10 years and in specific countries. Secondly, you need to search for relevant literature. So you can use academic databases such as Google Scholar. Google helps me a lot because it helps you to narrow down and fine-tune your search. So you use Google Scholar, you can use JSTOR, and you can also use PubMed to search for your peer-reviewed articles. You can also search for book references to search for relevant literature. Now guys, the tip here is this: you can use ChatGPT or OpenAI. So enter the command and ask them to help you search for relevant literature. So when ChatGPT and OpenAI generates these answers for you, then you can tweak it and edit it to how you want. So you can use, for example, you can search for things that are more specific. Don't just search broadly. Now also, if you're citation, you can use Zotero. Zotero is spelled Zetero. Zotero can help you organize your references. Now guys, we're moving on to step 3, which is to wait and select your sources. Now, not every article or book relevant to your research. I'm sure you already know this as you're preparing for your dissertation. So what you want to do is, for every book you pick up or every article or journal, you want, is this source recent and is it up to date? Don't go and be picking resources 20 years old when you have resources that are 2 years old, 3 years old. I am not saying there are no old resources or old sources that are good, but guys, focus on more current or recent and up-to-date sources for your literature. The second thing you want to look at, does the literature address my research? So guys, if the literature does not have anything to do with what you're writing about, don't just put it into your review to make up for the word count. So guys, you need to look that what you're reviewing concerns what you're talking about. Now, you also need to check if it is peer-reviewed and reliable. So guys, now, why do we need a literature to be peer-reviewed and reliable? If a literature is not peer-reviewed and from a reliable source, that means students can just make up sources. They can just make up names and call them sources. Guys, if you are going for a literature review, you need to get your sources from sites that are trusted. Like we said, you want to try places like JSTOR, you want to try PubMed, and you also want to try Google Scholar. Now guys, we're moving. As you're reviewing your sources, you also need to ensure that they align with your literature, your objectives. Guys, like we said, please don't just review literature in void, or how do I even put it? Reviewing your literature, it needs to be relevant to your research objectives. And remember, speaking this morning on today's live, we said a tip for your research objectives: make sure your research objectives is answering your research questions. This way there is balance. So guys, for every research question you raise for your dissertation, your objectives should be answering the research questions. So the trick here is, if your number one question is spell boy, your research should be on how to spell a boy, B-O-Y. If number two of your research question is why are boys stubborn, the number two of your what am I saying? If number two of your questions is why are boys stubborn, two of your objectives should be answering boys are stubborn because of XYZ. So this way you are going to be able to strike a balance. So now you need to evaluate the sources before you review them. So don't just go about picking sources and random sources. So when you make sure they are relevant, and make sure they are from reputable sites. Also make sure that it aligns with your research objectives. Now you can categorize your resources based on their relevance. Now we're moving on to step 4, organizing your literature. Once you have selected the most relevant studies, organize them by themes, trends, or chronologically. This way, your work seems clear. This also helps in understanding and also in the evolution of your research and how different studies relate to each other. The tip here is, try to use subheadings in your literature review. There is no rule penalizing you or stopping you from using headings in your literature review. When you use headings in your literature review, the way it's organized, and you also have a clear line of thought or train of thought. Now, when you want to write your literature review, how do you go about it? The first step of a literature review, or the first part, is your introduction. Now, your introduction is going to provide context. It needs to explain the importance of the topic. So before you rush into reviewing literature, you first need to provide context. You need to tell them this is why you are reviewing this certain literature. This is how literature concerns your research, and this is how your research is going to affect the existing literature, or this is the void your own research is filling, or the vacuum that your own literature is filling. So in your introduction, we said provide context, explain of your own dissertation topic, and also you need to define the scope of the review. Like we said, don't just review randomly. Define the scope. Let your readers or your examiners know what to expect in your introduction. Now, the second one is, what's the literature in sections organized by themes or methodology. So, number one, when you have provided context, we said context would include why you are writing on this topic. Then you are going to tell us why you are reviewing literature. Then you're also going to tell us how it concerns your own research or study. And you're also going to now tell us how your own study affects the body of literature. When you have done this, like we said, you then organize your discussion into sections. You can organize them into themes or methodologies. Now, discuss them chronologically. Guys, if you don't know what to do, an old dissertation and put it side by side by your own, and you can see how they read systematically and chronologically. Now, in conclusion, you need to summarize all the key findings. Now, it is not enough to be quoting and citing what somebody said. You have finished quoting and citing what they said. You now go on to summarize and explain. Guys, this is where you use a lot of signposting. You need to explain what you have already told us in the discussion section. Now, I'm going to talk about the tips in a strong literature review. So you don't want your literature review to be mediocre. Here are 4 essential tips for you. Like we already said, please don't just summarize sources. You need to critically access these sources. Summarizing 20 sources and not explaining them. You can go for just 5 sources and summarize them and assess them. You need to tell why you are assessing that particular source. So you need to be objective as well. You can't be biased and sentimental in literature review. Like when I was writing my dissertation, because I was just a beginner, I was making a lot of rookie mistakes. I was so sentimental and biased that you could tell from my tone of voice and the way I was writing. So guys, you want to be critical, be objective, not objective. The second thing you want to do, you need to stay focused. Ensure that every literature you include is relevant to your research questions. Number 3, synthesize. Bring together multiple studies in each section rather than discussing each source individually. Number 4 thing you want to do, you want to paraphrase. Avoid quoting people's work directly. A lot of time, if you are quoting people's work, make sure you are putting the reference. You want to avoid academic dishonesty or plagiarism. So the best thing to do is all paraphrase other people's work when you're using it, except if the message is going to be best passed when you say it directly. Now, how to avoid plagiarism in a review. Guys, it is essential to watch out for this. Now, it is one thing after putting all the hard work and writing your dissertation, then imagine falling for something you didn't know about. So did you know that you could also self-plagiarize? So I'm going to talk about plagiarizing people and plagiarizing your own self. Now, how to avoid plagiarism in literature review. Plagiarism is a serious academic offense or misconduct, and it can severely affect your research credibility. And here is how to avoid. The first thing you want to do to avoid plagiarism, you need to cite all your sources correctly. Use citation styles. Guys, if it's Oscola, if it's Chicago, if it's MLA, make sure you are citing all your sources. Even if you have sources in one page, you need to cite them so that you're not in court for some plagiarism. The next thing you want to do, you want to paraphrase. Like we already said, when discussing someone else's work, put in their own words so that you can credit the original scholar, but try to paraphrase. So this way, people would know, or your examiners would know you're not just copying and pasting. So paraphrase when discussing someone else's work. Put in your ideas, put in your opinion, while you are still crediting the original author. So as you credit the original author, nobody can say you stole their work. So now, guys, especially if you use OpenAI or ChatGPT for your research, you also want to be checking it on Grammarly so that you're not, stealing other people's work. Okay, hello, I'm speaking about how to review your literature. How to review literature in academic writing. I was given a step-by-step guide to review literature, and for the sake of the people that just joined us again, I have to start from the top. So guys, we're speaking about how to review your literature in academic writing, a step-by-step guide. So we said a literature is a critical part of any research project, and it includes dissertation. It involves reviewing existing academic work. Now, a step-by-step guide for reviewing your literature. The number one thing you want to do, you need to define the scope of your literature. Before you begin, you need to tell them what aspects you are focused. Please don't just review literature broad like that. Now, you also need to look what time frame or geographical location does your review cover. So if you're reviewing, you need to show that you are reviewing from, for instance, 2020 to 2024, reviewing 1960 to 2020. So you need to ensure that time frame and geographic location is considered, and you need to show that you know what you're doing. For example, if your dissertation is on the effect media and mental health, you might focus on literature review published in the last years in specific countries. As we already know, some specific countries are already in the forefront in the fight against, mental health. So you are going to be looking at literature that was published just in the last 10 years, not the last 50 years. In the last 50 years, there was not a lot of literature talking about mental health. So this is where context matters a lot when searching for your literature. Now, you want to search for relevant literature. Try to use Google Scholar. Google Scholar is free. So on your Google search tab, enter Google Scholar. This way you can narrow down your search. Also, you can use JSTOR. JSTOR is spelled J-S-T-O-R. JSTOR. Or you can also use PubMed to search for peer-reviewed article. Guys, you can use Boolean operators. Now, Boolean operators would help you to research. Boolean operators is B-O-O-L-E-A-N. I'm saying things to help you with your literature review. Number one, we said Google Scholar, we said JSTOR, PubMed, and Boolean. You can also use Zotero. Zotero is a citation platform. This will help you, will give you a lot of ease in your citation. Now, not every article is relevant to your literature. Some of them, you can just borrow the English or word and use it in your own work. Now, you don't have to cite or copy every work you see. You need to check for things that are only relevant to what you're writing. Also, if they are you need to check if they are up to date. So if you have resources over the past 20 years, you'll be going to be looking for resources that are 100 years old, except if they address your research questions specifically. So you want to avoid outdated and old sources. Also, you want to be going for peer-reviewed sources. If you want to know if an article is peer-reviewed or not, like I said, take your article, enter it on OpenAI on ChatGPT. It's going to show you. Also, like I said, you can use apps like Google Scholar, JSTOR, and PubMed. Now, guys, organize literature. You need to organize it by themes or trends or chronologically. Now, always use subheadings in your literature review. A literature review becomes so bulky and so crammed up, and even you, the writer, you get confused. So the first thing you want to do about your literature review, organize them in themes. Organize them according to trends. In fact, you can organize them according to the research methods. Now, use subheadings in your literature review to make it easy to navigate. Nothing is stopping you from having 20 subheadings in your literature review. When you have subheadings in your literature review, or the reader can go straight forward to what they want to read. Remember, your examiner does not read everything. They just look for some important points in your literature review. So guys, now that we have organized everything, let us look at how literature review should relate to the research questions. When you're writing your literature review, the first step is you need to provide context. Explain the importance of the topic. So before you even start reviewing other people's work, and you need to explain, you need to tell them the context, you need to tell them why you're viewing this thing, you need to tell them why or how the literature you are reviewing concerns your own work. So what to do? Provide context in your introduction. Explain the importance of your research topic in your introduction. Also, you need to define the scope of your literature review. So you can tell them in the introduction that this literature only covers 5 years or it only covers 2 years ago. This is what I mean by explaining the scope of your literature. You can also explain that this literature review covers only case studies or interview. So this is how to introduce your literature. Now, the next thing you want to do, you want to go in with discuss the literature in sections, like we said, organized in themes or methodology. Now, discuss what you've said one after the other, then summarize the key findings and explain how your research would build on the knowledge. So guys, we're moving on to essentials for writing a literature review. The number one thing you want to do, like we said, don't just summarize sources. You need to critically assess them. Now, the tip, if you don't know how to review a literature, you can go online and search for old dissertations online. You can even search for your own dissertations literature or their old work. Now look at how they reviewed their own work. Then you can copy it. I'm not saying copy them word for word, but look at their own structure. Guys, also, if you know how to review your literature, once you have your main points, you can enter your literature into OpenAI or ChatGPT. Tell OpenAI or ChatGPT or even Canva to expand on the point or on the prompt you fed it. So when the OpenAI and ChatGPT expands or reviews your literature for you, you can then take that literature and open your Grammarly app, check for plagiarism, then tweak and turn things around a bit, and you'll be good to go. Also, you can use Turnitin app to check for your plagiarism and word similarity. Now guys, to avoid plagiarism in your literature review, as we mostly know, plagiarism is a serious academic misconduct, and in some places is an academic offense, and this might impact your results or even impact your own image as a researcher. So the first thing you want to do, properly cite all the sources you used. Guys, even if you didn't quote the word for word, just put in the sources. This gives your research more credibility. Now, the second thing you want to do, if you want to avoid plagiarism, you need to paraphrase. Don't say what the person said word for word. You don't need. So guys, paraphrase when discussing somebody else's work, but also give them their credit. Now, use a plagiarism checker. Guys, use things like Grammarly and Turnitin. They are free of charge. Check your sincerity and see if you are doing anything wrong. Remember, we said you can use OpenAI or ChatGPT to expand on your dissertation ideas. Expand on what you already have. Don't just tell ChatGPT to write a dissertation for you. You give it prompts and commands for it to fine-tune or develop for you. So guys, we are moving to useful dissertation hacks for a literature review. Number one, you want to set your clear goals. So break your literature review into small and manageable tasks. Set deadlines for each section. Guys, literature review can be confusing and can be frustrating. So what you want to do, break them into small manageable tasks. So today, if you are reviewing about methodology, tomorrow, if you are reviewing about discussions, break them down like that. Don't cram everything together. And remember to use headings in your literature review. Now you can use Mind Mister. That is a mind app. It can help you organize your themes. Also, summarize what you read. As you are reading other people's literature, make sure you make notes. Make sure you take points. Make sure you steal ideas. I'm not saying you should steal other people's work, but make sure you pick something from those people's work. Go and read the work of people you respect and pick literature and write them down. So you can use this to write your own work later. Now you need to prioritize quality over quantity. A lot of time you're trying to meet up with word count. Guys, don't just pack everything and you see and put there. Don't copy this literature and put. Make sure you are actually reviewing this literature. I'm going to do a comprehensive video on how to review literature. This is a live, that's why I'm just rushing. Now we are looking at 5 apps and AI tools to help you with your literature review. Guys, instead of working too hard, you can work smart. You can make the journey easy for yourself. How can you make this easy? You can use some apps and AI tools to help you with your literature review. Now, the number 1 app we're going to be looking is Zotero. Zotero is spelled Zotero. Zotero. So with Zotero app, Zotero is a free reference management tool. It helps you organize, it helps you cite, and it also helps you share research sources. And for your Zotero app, you can store PDF, you can store your notes, and you can even store bibliographic information. Now guys, the next one, Mendeley. Mendeley app is another popular app for management. So guys, if you want to manage your research properly, you can download the Mendeley app. Mendeley is spelled Mendeley. Mendeley. Now the next one is Grammarly. Grammarly is a writing assistant. It doesn't only check your grammar, but it also helps you with your tone, your style, and your ability. Now we're moving on to number 4 app. It's called Research Rabbit. Guys, download the Research Rabbit. Research Rabbit is an AI tool that helps you find relevant literature based on paper already using. So guys, number 1, Zotero, Mendeley, Grammarly, and Research Rabbit. The next one is Connected Paper. This is the 5th and final app or AI tool for your research. Connected Paper. Connected Paper is a visual tool that helps you explore papers related to your topic. Guys, we also said you can use OpenAI and ChatGPT to help you fine-tune your literature review. When you finish using OpenAI and ChatGPT, make sure to check it against Grammarly. So guys, as we already said earlier, writing a literature review is an essential part of an academic research. It requires critical thinking, requires organization, and it also requires a careful analysis of existing work. By following a structured process, beginning with defining your literature scope, search for relevant sources, and end well-organized synthesis of the literature, you can create a comprehensive review that enhances your research using tools like Zotero, Mendeley, and Research Rabbit. Guys, you can also explore OpenAI GPT. You can also download Connected Papers. That is an app. You can also download Zotero. That is an app for your literature review. You can also download Grammarly, Research Rabbit, and Mendeley. So guys, thank you for joining me today. So this is my dissertation planner. It's been selling a lot on Amazon. So that is why I thought I should do a live video on literature review. So it's a small planner which helps you to brainstorm your dissertation topic. So we're going to start from the brainstorming. So the first part is your brainstorming section. So if you look well, you could have your idea 1, 2, and 3. you can see that you can also compare methodologies, compare the relevance of your research. You can now draw a conclusion. So this is step 1 of brainstorming your dissertation proposal. So you need to compare ideas first. You streamline or fine-tune your ideas. Now we're going to move on to the part 2. So the stage 2 of your brainstorming, guys. So you have your idea 1 and your idea 2. You need to check for access to research materials. Guys, remember, you might find some research materials online, but you might not have access to it. So you need to compare before you even put in a proposal. Now you need to check the ethical issue involved. Then you move on to your conclusion. Moving on to the next one, guys. Before you start writing your dissertation, you want to read a lot of literature. So guys, you can take an A4 paper and draw your line like this. So if you are summarizing every paper you read, it makes your literature review very, very easy. So if you can look, you can see the title of the date it was published, the day you assessed it. You can look at the methodology, and you can also look at the summary and the conclusion. So guys, make sure you read a lot of literature before you start your literature review. So move to the next one. We are looking at a dissertation proposal checklist. So guys, for your dissertation proposal, the thing you want to look at is your dissertation abstract. The next thing you want to look at is your table of content, introduction and background study. You want to state the problem. You want to state your aim and research objectives, literature review, research methodology, limitations and ethical issues, proposal chapter outline, time management plan, and your conclusion. So guys, this is your dissertation proposal checklist. And we are moving on to your dissertation, chapter 1 itself. I know those people that are graduating in December are writing their dissertation already. So this is chapter 1 of my dissertation planner. The first thing you want to do, like we said earlier, is to look at the background of the studies. So you want to tell your examiner or your audience a little bit about the problem. So that is where you have the background of studies. And the next one is the theoretical framework, and then we have the conceptual framework. So you can write this down. Part 1 of your dissertation. We said we're starting by a background of studies, a theoretical framework, and conceptual framework. So that's part of chapter 1. Moving on, we are looking still on chapter 1 of your dissertation. We are looking at the purpose of the study. We are looking at research questions, and we are also looking at research aim and objectives. Guys, moving on, next one, we are looking at the significance of your dissertation. I also looking at a mini conclusion. Now, chapter 2 of your dissertation. What should you include in your chapter 2? First one is an introduction, a brief statement of the research problems. Then you introduce relevant research findings. You also do an analysis of the point of view. This is your literature review I'm talking. So what should be in your literature review section? Guys, here you have it. An introduction or a brief restatement of your research problem, introducing relevant research findings. That's the first part of your literature review. Also, analysis of the point of views. That is the second part of your literature review. Guys, moving on, still on literature review, you need to look at the rationale or the analysis pattern. Why did most of the authors say the things they say? Why did they use the research methods they used? And what do you think about these research methods? What do you think about their findings? So these are the things you should be looking out for in your literature review to show your examiners that you know what you're doing. So guys, we said then you your findings, then you also analyze all the literature you found to do it systematically. Now, still on your literature review, you want to look for important insights from the analysis you just did. The next one, you will elaborate on relevant research. So any research that is relevant to what you are doing, then you elaborate on it. You also need to make the connection in your literature review. It's in your literature review going to show how a particular literature is relevant to you and how you address it. Now, moving on to the next one, we are looking at conclusion. So chapter 2, which is usually your literature review chapter, concludes summary of the main points, Then you briefly restate the relevance of research. Now, guys, we're moving on to chapter 3 of our dissertation. So, starting chapter 3, you want to start with a mini by restating the purpose of the study. So, you need to restate why you're writing that dissertation. Number 3, chapter 3 of your dissertation, you also need to explain the key points from your literature review. Now, guys, moving on, you need to discuss and describe your research method. So you did case study. If it was interview, whatever you did, you need to explain in your chapter 3. So remember, we said at the beginning of chapter 3, you need to restate the research question, the purpose of your study, and you also explain the key points you got from your literature review before you move on to methods and methodology. Remember, we said research methods, how you collected the data, while research methodology is the overarching strategy. So why, how, when, and everything put together, that is your methodology. Methodology is your tactic, is your style, while method is just the method you use to collect the data. Now, moving on, we're still on chapter 3 on how to write a dissertation. If you are writing a qualitative dissertation, you might be having research participants. So you want to discuss about your research participants first, because we don't know them. You know them, so you have to explain to us. Now, guys, you need to tell us the sources of your data. If you don't tell your examiner the sources of your data, it looks like you just picked up researches or you just made up the results. So you need to explain the sources of your data. The next thing you want to do, the details of measurements, the numbers, and the rationale for your choice. Moving on, we're moving on to the mini discussion of chapter 3 and then the conclusion. Guys, we're almost done. So, chapter 4 of your dissertation, if you are writing qualitative, you talk about your question. So if you're on a quantitative route, you want to present your hypothesis. Now you move on to your findings. Then if you are for quantitative, you're talking about, but for qualitative, findings. So social sciences and law, sometimes you use the word findings, while people in chemistry, data science, computer science might tell you results. They are in the quantitative. You also need to discuss your findings. Now, moving on to chapter 5, you need a mini introduction and a summary of everything you have said in your introduction for your chapter 5. Moving on, implications of the study. Guys, I'm reading from my book, A Dissertation Planner. It's on Amazon. I'm going to put the link when I finish. So, guys, now before you submit your dissertation, you want to check that you have made recommendations for further studies and also your conclusions. Now, your submission checklist. Guys, this is your dissertation submission checklist. The first thing you want to look at is your cover title. So look at your cover title. Is your name there? Is the title of your research there? Is the spelling correct? Then you want to move on to copyright page. Some institutions don't need it, institution require it. Now you're moving on to your dedication page if you want. It is optional. Moving on to table of contents, optional, but strongly advised. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, up to Chapter 5. Then remember to add your dissertation sources and remember to add your appendix. Now, guys, we have a general checklist. These are some pitfalls. Remember when I started, I said I scored just 68 in my dissertation, and I knew it was because of so many things I overlooked. I looked things like spellings and settings. So let's look at a general checklist. Let's do a general housekeeping. The first thing you want to check, your word count. Is your word count over what you were asked? So if it was 10% over or under. The next thing you want to check for your dissertation before you submit, you need to check the fonts. Some institution will give you fonts guideline. The next thing you're checking is your format, your spellings, your punctuation, reference, plagiarism, reference links, checking your reference style. You're checking the relevance of your dissertation. How relevant is it, or are you just writing? The next thing you're checking is ethical issues. The next one is limitation. Then we've got consent, we've got research participants, your institution guidelines, you need to check following. Remember, we discussed signposting this morning, so you need to also do signposting. Then you also need to proofread your dissertation for any spell. And the next one, your supervisor's input. Remember, before you submit, you want to meet with your supervisor or your supervisory team. And the next one, mission guidelines for your institution. You have to take note of the date, so try to submit within time. Guys, we're moving on to your dissertation milestones. So remember to document your dissertation milestones. Then this is a word count schedule. So if you're writing a dissertation, it is so easy to get carried away and you'll be out of time. But the simple trick is try to nail your proposal first. If your proposal is perfect, trust me, you'll be able to get your dissertation itself. So guys, this is my own word count schedule. This is what I did during my dissertation. So I turned it into a planner. So guys, in your week, you can decide to go 500 words, 1,000 words, 2,000 words, or even 4,000 words. Guys, moving on to the next one, we have our 1 week project planner. Remember to plan your dissertation like a project so you are not lagging behind. Moving on, we have meeting with supervisor, the planning sheet. So before you meet your supervisor, you want to be ready. So the first thing, check what date, the venue, and the agenda. So guys, if you don't plan your agenda, you might be scared or timid when you get there. So make sure you have an agenda before you go in for your meeting. Also, you need to check if there are other people in attendance. Are there other members of the supervisory team, or are there other students? Also, you need to create your questions for your meeting with your supervisor. And at the end of it, you need a take home, and you also need to take note of your to-do, your next meeting. So guys, I think that is all I have for you today on how to write a dissertation. But I might come and do a brief recap of what we just said. I'm going to talk about how to review literature. So guys, before we leave, I'm going to talk about signposting. Remember, we spoke about signposting this morning, and we said signposting refers to the use of phrases and sentences to guide your readers through the argument. So we said examples of signposting. You can use phrases like, in this chapter, I will discuss. The next section, I will explore. As mentioned earlier, the purpose of this study is da 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 da. So guys, to effectively use signposting, you should start with an overview. So before you begin a chapter, you need to give an overview first. Now the next one, you need to transition smoothly with your signposting phrases so readers can follow your argument. Now the next one, summarize your signposting. So guys, also before I go quickly, let's look at the difference between research methods and research methodology. Now guys, many students confuse research methods with methodology, but they refer to the different aspects of the research process. Now, a research method, it refers to the specific tool or techniques you used. That is to how. The methodology, it refers to the overall strategy. So the methodology refers to the why, the how, the when, the ifs, the buts. What research method, it just refers to the how of the research, how you gathered your data. So guys, if you're writing a dissertation, number 1, an introduction. Number 2, literature review. I'm just reading over what we already did this morning. Literature review. Number 3, methodology. Number 4, data analysis and results. Number 5, your discussion. You have your conclusion. You have your reference and your bibliography. Also, guys, we said in this session today, 10 types of research and brief explanations for each of them. Number 1, we said surveys. Number 2, interviews. We have case studies. We have experiments. We have observational research. We also have ethnographic studies. We have focus groups. We have longitudinal studies. We have content analysis. And guys, number 10. I'm looking for the 10th research method. So guys, I've talked about ethnography. I've talked about case study. I've talked about interviews. So thank you so much for joining me today. And tomorrow we are going to be talking about how a chapter 3, that is the research methodology section of your writing. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly hit the subscribe button. So before I go, I'm going to briefly advertise my dissertation planner. So this my dissertation planner is available on Amazon. So this planner starts by helping you brainstorm and compare topics. So you can compare 1, 2, 3, 4 topics. This is stage 1 of your dissertation brainstorming. So you can see idea 1, idea 2, then your methodology and the events and the conclusion. So guys, moving on to stage 2. At stage 2, you just compare 2 ideas, idea 1 and idea 2. Access to the ethical issues involved and your conclusion. Now guys, literature summary sheet. You need to summarize a lot of literature and take notes. So with this planner, trust me, your work is easy peasy. This planner gives you every step of the way. So you don't have to be on your own. You can see I'm even using this for my own thesis. So guys, thank you for joining my today's live and for encouraging me. Without you guys, I would not be here. Quickly, before I leave, we need a general checklist. Before you submit your dissertation, let's look at a general checklist. Number 1, the word count. Number 2, you need to look at the format. You need to check your spellings. You need to check your punctuations. You need to check your reference. You need to check plagiarism. You need to check your referencing links that they are not broken. Reference style, relevance, ethical issues, research limitation, your consent, participants, your signposting, proofreading, and supervisor's input. So guys, again, thank you for joining me today. Derek, oh, I wish, but distance is a barrier. So again, thank you for joining my live. See you all next time.